Welcome to the session. I'm Rachel Blackburn. I'm on the corporate operations team at Oracle, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. This webinar is part of our Oracle at Oracle webinar series, where we have the opportunity to hear from the executive team that reimagined Oracle. In the series of webinars, we share insights from our own journey to the cloud and demonstrate how we're using Oracle Cloud's power of business and enable exceptional customer and employee experiences. And we'll share our learnings along the way so that others can do the same. So let's dive into today's topic. Over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, you'll hear how Oracle is using the Oracle Apex low-code platform to quickly launch the COVID-19 Therapeutic Application. Now I'll hand it over to your host for the webinar today, Joel Coleman, so he can introduce himself and tell you about what he does at Oracle.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Joel Coleman. I'm a Senior Director of Software Development at Oracle, and I'm a co-creator of something called Oracle Application Express, or Apex. And today, I'm going to provide a little education on what Apex is and what you can do with it. I'll also show how Oracle is using Apex across the entire company. And then I'll also present how Oracle used Application Express and Oracle Cloud to develop and deploy solutions to help with the global pandemic. Let's get going. So let's start with a short intro of Apex. Apex is the industry's most used enterprise low-code platform. There are more than 50,000 customers worldwide using Apex today to deliver a variety of solutions, both large and small. There are millions of Apex apps and billions of page views delivered every week around the globe with Apex. Apex is truly a market leader. When it comes to application development, low code is about writing less code, delivering faster and with higher quality. And low code platforms are a way for both professional developers and citizen developers to build and deliver applications. And low code solutions are rising rapidly. Analysts predict that by 2024, more than half of all application development activity will be done using low code tools. And at Oracle, we are ahead of this wave, and we've been capitalizing on this for years. The benefits of low code are manifold, but I wish to focus on a couple. With less code, there's far quicker time to deliver, and with that, ultimately far less cost. And another important factor about low code is that it is much easier to learn. You're able to broaden the number of people to be able to contribute solutions to the enterprise. You don't necessarily need expensive, super technical, full stack developers to develop full stack quality results. The contrast between the traditional development methodology of writing everything in lovingly handcrafted code and low code solutions, this contrast is stark. And with Apex compared to traditional coding and development, we believe for the equivalent functionality of business applications, Apex is 20 times faster with 100 times less code. And not only is this far cheaper and faster to deliver, but it's also much easier to maintain and extend in the future. So what's Apex? Apex is Oracle's low-code framework for building data-driven applications. With little to no code, you can build apps which look and run great on both the desktop or a tablet or a smartphone. You can quickly build reports and forms to maintain operational data. And if you know a little bit of SQL, you can flourish with Apex. As a matter of fact, using SQL, you can take full advantage of the rich application development functionality of the Oracle database. I believe the Oracle database provides a wealth of application development functionality. It's far more than just a place to store your rows of data and get those rows out. Everything is built in out of the box and ready to use, from spatial data processing to machine learning to analytics to text management and more. And rather than use some external service to manage all these different types of data, this is all native to Oracle database and ultimately native to Apex. As a great example, over this past summer, we conducted a webinar with the Oracle Spatial Product Development team, and they had been tasked by a foreign government customer to build a contact tracing demonstration using real location data. And as a part of this work, this Oracle Spatial Product Development team, they had extended Spatial with new APIs to facilitate contact tracing. And using Oracle Apex, we were able to put a very elegant UI on top of this solution. And I encourage you to watch the replay, but this is a great example of the robustness of application development functionality present in the Oracle database today. Apex is used to help solve a broad array of problems, both large and small. The simplest problem, and we see this in every enterprise, is using spreadsheets as multi-user databases. There are countless issues with this, but as we'll see shortly, it's really trivial to move this data into an Oracle database and put an elegant, responsive UI on it. So instead of sending someone an attachment in a mail message, you can simply give someone a URL and you can easily create a multi-user web application. Apex is also ideal for what we call opportunistic applications, and that is those apps which have a loose definition and need to be available yesterday, where there's an immediate need. And during this global pandemic, we've seen the rise of opportunistic app requirements, apps which the customer, they never thought of, and the immediate need is real. And countless opportunistic apps have been developed around the globe using Apex. Apex is included at no additional charge with every Oracle database. If you're licensed and supported for Oracle Database on premises, you are licensed and supported for Apex. Apex is also a part of every Oracle Database Cloud Service, including Exadata Cloud Service, Database as a Service, and Oracle Autonomous Database. Apex is even available from other cloud providers. The development and runtime experience on premises is virtually identical to the experience on cloud, and you can freely move applications between them. This is a partner of ours in the United Kingdom, Explorer UK, and one of their focus areas is Apex application development. And personally, I love their motto because it is very true. They say, we develop cloud-ready applications. And the Apex apps that are built on premises today are, without change, tomorrow's cloud applications. And I'd like to show a little bit of a demonstration here. And it's only going to take a few minutes, and I'll be completely forthcoming with you. To save myself from any network challenges, I actually recorded this, but I recorded it just a couple hours ago. And everything I'm going to show you, I did this in real time, and you can do yourself right now on apex.oracle.com, which is the evaluation instance of Apex. Anybody on the planet can come along, sign up, and begin building applications. And like I said, this is 100% real, and I recorded this just a couple hours ago. And so I want to start with this classic use case of if I have a spreadsheet, I have rows of data, and I want to put this in an Oracle database and create an application on top of this. So what I'll do is I'll start the Create Application wizard. I'll drag and drop my spreadsheet. We parse and analyze this data. We give you a preview of the data. You can specify the underlying Oracle database table name where you want this. And what we'll do is create that table and insert these rows from the spreadsheet. Then we begin the Create Application wizard. And as you can see, we have predefined some reasonable pages that should be useful for this app. Check our features and hit the Create Application wizard button. And what we're doing right now is defining this application. It's not a code generator. It's actually defining in metadata this application definition. And with no code so far, I have 28 pages, and I can begin immediately running my application. So I'll log into my application. One of the first pages we created, we took our best guess as a dashboard of interesting statistics. There's date-related data, so we put a calendar component on this. We created a report end form, so this information is now completely editable, completely manageable. I can do basic filtering, I can sort, I can do group by, I can do pivots. And we also created something called a faceted search. And this is bringing the ease of use of commercial websites to business applications. So everyone knows how to use this. And not only with this report can I filter my data, but I can also chart this in real time as well. Within this same application, we actually have built an administration section, and we gather performance statistics about the application. One thing I'm showing here is we can change the user interface to Redwood, which matches our Oracle look and feel. And here I'm showing the telemetry data about this application, so I can find out who's using this, what pages are fast, what pages are slow, which ones are most popular. And best of all, everything that I just created, and you can create now on apex.oracle.com or any Apex instance, is a completely responsive application. So everything we created looks great on my desktop, on my smartphone, or on my tablet. And I don't have to know CSS. I don't have to know HTML or JavaScript. All I have to know is really a little bit of SQL. And let's say I have this data and now I wish to share it with someone else. I wish to provide an API. What I can easily do is go back into Apex, go into the SQL workshop of Apex. I can browse my table. I can browse the data. And what I can do is click the little REST tab, flip a switch, and now I can REST enable that same table. So now I've created the underlying methods, the get, put, post, and delete, for anyone to effectively access and interoperate with this table I've just created. All of this with no code. So how is Apex used at Oracle? Succinctly stated, virtually every line of business at Oracle uses Apex to deliver their solutions. As I often say, Oracle is a large enterprise like every other large enterprise on the planet. We have finance and legal and HR and payroll and real estate and facilities. And Oracle's also a SaaS company. We use our own enterprise software in the cloud to run Oracle's business. But typically lines of business have much smaller application needs, which aren't necessarily met by our own enterprise software. And very often it's too expensive to create bespoke solutions. And what typically do lines of business use? They often resort to spreadsheets. But I firmly believe the lines of business will always solve their problem. They may not use the best tools or the most appropriate tools, but they will find a way to solve their problems. At Oracle, virtually every line of business uses Apex for their information management needs. We have a corporate instance inside of Oracle, an Apex service that every employee can immediately start using and building applications and maintaining data. And IT hosts the development and the runtime of thousands of applications on this service. 3 of the applications on this list, they were written by our team, our Apex product development team. But all others were implemented by the respective lines of business. And most of these people in these lines of business would not consider themselves professional developers, at least not full stack developers. So the most popular application in all of Oracle is the employee directory, something we call RA People. And it's used every day by tens of thousands of Oracle employees. This is a mini data mart combining our HR data along with our property information. We recently collaborated with our own real estate and facilities organization to augment RA People and add functionality to reserve office space. As some Oracle offices around the globe open back up, They are doing so with restricted capacity. And in a matter of weeks, we've developed this reservation system for the entire enterprise of Oracle. Our own cloud operations team, they use Apex to track information about capacity and patching and associated support requests. The portal on top of our manufacturing and distribution group, this is running on top of Apex. And this is developed by self-proclaimed citizen developers. Personally, I think they're underselling their talents, but they certainly would not classify themselves as full stack developers. Real estate and facilities, they've developed what they call the global office locator using Oracle Apex, so you can easily look up information about any facility in any geography at Oracle. Instead of sending questions to payroll via email or an email list, which is the old way that they would manage this, they developed their own application to receive these requests and triage them and track them appropriately. And my favorite application in all of Oracle is the global holiday calendar. And this replaced how HR would previously communicate holidays, which was via a static page on a website. You had to navigate to your continent, navigate to your specific country to find your holidays for the year. And if you wanted to do it for another country, you had to start the process all over again. And this was replaced by a system which moved all this data into an Oracle database with a searchable UI in Apex on top of it. And the possibilities open up as far as functionality. But the greatest part about this, a lady in human resources wrote this app. And she's not a classically trained software developer. This just proves that you can solve small problems and have huge impact across the enterprise. You don't have to build your company's own ERP system to have a significant impact. And now let's focus on these solutions to help address COVID-19. In March 2020, Oracle was tasked with delivering a solution to assist with the collection of data about coronavirus treatments. This was not a clinical trial system. It was intended to be a data gathering environment for patients who are being treated for coronavirus to report on their symptoms. And the purpose of this initial system was to simply provide more data to decision makers in the US government. That evening, it was on March 18th, we sprang into action and we collaborated with other executives at Oracle and health science specialists at Oracle to begin developing the data model. And I'm ashamed to say, we even started this on the external site apex.oracle.com because we needed an environment immediately. We had the first prototype for the system working in 3 days, and we were ready to conduct a review of these applications. The first customer we demonstrated this to was the US government, and then the following day, we demonstrated this and got feedback from the executives at Oracle. During this design review, we were able to use the power of Apex by collaborating with, like I said, executives from Oracle, these health science specialists, external doctors, and I had to black their images out of the top because I don't want to get in trouble. But we were working with them to build these applications in real time. And instead of taking their feedback and going away and making the changes and then reconvening, we were able to immediately make the requests, the requested changes to the layout, the presentation, the help text, the labels, the typos and medications that we had, even make changes to the data model in real time. And at the end of our 2.5-hour marathon, we had made tremendous progress on these applications. And really, there was very little feedback for us to take and go away and implement, because we had all done it in real time with these executives and these doctors. And the doctors praised Apex. They told our CTO that the system was simply amazing. They had never seen anything like it. And we iterated this system over the next week, working in collaboration with all these same people. And we went from not a single byte of this application to a fully deployed system on the Oracle Cloud in 12 days. And I have to say that this was easily one of the proudest moments in my career, and also probably one of the most challenging. Over this period of time, I saw my wife and my family for about an hour a day. And keep in mind, I and everybody else on the planet, we were working from home at the time. But this was weekends, everything. But I was especially proud when the White House and Health and Human Services of the US government announced the availability of this system at one of the daily coronavirus briefings. And what's fascinating about this is, even though Apex itself got a lot of recognition for the delivery of these applications, it really was a well-orchestrated army of people at Oracle who contributed to the development and rollout of these systems. So over 1,000 people across the database division, the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure division, product security, countless other lines of business contributed to these applications. And I believe it's an amazing testament to what's possible on the Oracle Cloud. With Apex, we developed a collection of 7 applications comprising more than 200 pages, deployed effectively on a system with planetary scale. And I remain convinced that I don't think any other company or group on the planet could have achieved this in that short amount of time with as high a quality and as high a scalability. I gave an interview to industry analyst Tony Baer, and he published a very accurate and complete portrayal of this system on ZDNet, and I've included a QR code here if you wish to check this out later. By the time the White House announced this initial system, the therapeutic learning system, we were already well underway in the development of the next system. And since then, there have been even more solutions developed using Apex and Oracle Cloud. The patient monitoring system was developed in conjunction with research hospitals in the US and other health systems. And the purpose of this was to essentially surveil a population as the coronavirus makes its way across a geography. The diagnostic management system, this was developed and continues to be developed to assist with the registration, scheduling, and management of test results. And as you can imagine, as effectively the globe goes from lockdown to treatment, systems like this are going to be very much necessary, certainly in the US, most likely globally. And most recently, the Coronavirus Prevention Network was launched in the US to gather participants for forthcoming vaccine trials. And this system was developed in under 2 weeks, deployed on effectively the same Oracle Cloud infrastructure, and was made available nationwide across the US. Over 60,000 people signed up for this in less than a week. And to date, there have been more than 500,000 registrations on the system. I think not bad for an application, another application created from scratch in under 2 weeks. For many other cases where our customers have quickly developed solutions to address coronavirus, I encourage you to go to the community site, apex.world, and click on the tab COVID-19 apps. And this is a wonderful display of how our community around the globe has contributed countless solutions to help with the pandemic, whether it be find the status of grocery items, to do route planning for the delivery of grocery status, or in the case of even a partner in Guyana, they developed a website for the government for people to express their need for materials, and for others across the entire country to contribute donation items. I realize this was a lot in a short amount of time, but let's summarize. We, Oracle, have the industry-leading low-code app dev platform in Apex. It's very easy for people to learn and get started, but it's also used by professional developers. If you know SQL, you can flourish with Apex and also capitalize on the rich app dev platform of Oracle Database. Apex is available everywhere, both on premises and Oracle Cloud, and there are global success stories across all industries. Lastly, there's a large development community today of more than 500,000 Apex developers and 50,000 customers who are achieving success with Apex and low code. If you go to apex.oracle.com/community, you can find more information like a global list of consulting companies, books, success stories, commercial applications, and many more. And for more information about Apex in general, I encourage you to visit apex.oracle.com. If you just go to apex.oracle.com, click the little hamburger menu in the upper left, and you can get a menu of really all of the information we have about Apex there. And I think this is going to be much to the amazement of everyone in attendance, and probably even the folks from Oracle. I might have condensed this even too much. I hope this short introduction was useful for you, and I'd like to open this up to any questions that might have come in, please.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. And for everyone in attendance, you can submit your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Joel, first question for you. If someone wanted to build a healthcare solution on Oracle Cloud using Apex, is that a certified environment?
Depends what you mean by certified, but I will say that the autonomous database platform on the Oracle Cloud, where Apex is available, we have a number of industry certifications, whether it be SOC 1 or SOC 2, but also it is a HIPAA validated environment. And we have a number of partners in the healthcare industry who they have created a number of solutions on Apex on autonomous database. And this is obviously a big deal, certainly in the US, that they don't have to, they're basically forbidden from deploying any solution which is not HIPAA validated. So short answer, Rachel, yes.
Awesome. And someone asked another question. I've been told the low-code application development is inflexible. Is that true, and especially true for Apex solutions?
Yeah, that's kind of a common misconception. Very often when people think of low-code solutions, they confuse this with no-code. And no-code, there are no-code application development tools out there, and those are the what you would classify as a black box, right? You have this black box, and I'm going to build my application, and I'm going to try to fit my needs within that black box. But I find that those are typically inadequate. Those are perfect for the simplest of use cases, but for even modest line of business requirements, they are insufficient because everybody has some level of customization somewhere that cannot be met by this black box or I'm going to turn this knob. And that's where low code application development platforms shine, that they enable you to customize or put specific business rules or logic with just a little bit of code and not requiring a lot of code. But at the reverse end of this, even though I demonstrated an application where I used no code in this case, I could have used a little bit of SQL, but I used no CSS or JavaScript or HTML. But if I wanted to, I could have had complete control over every byte of this application itself. And so Apex is one of the few low-code platforms that let you start with no code, then employ a little bit of code as necessary. And for those customers who consider themselves professional developers and want to control every aspect, every byte associated with the application, you can write as much JavaScript and HTML and CSS as you like. And people have created completely custom applications still on the same platform called Apex. So short answer is, I think some low code platforms are inflexible. I think no code platforms, they solve a purpose, but they remain, by definition, they are inflexible. And I think Apex is one of the few that spans the range of no code, low code, and as necessary, I'll call it complete control.
Great, thanks. And is there a free version of Apex? And are we able to share the URL? And are there stipulations for using this version?
Thanks. I can't remember if I touched on this when I covered how Apex is available everywhere. But there, believe it or not, you can use Apex for free on free Oracle database. And there are two ways that you could use the Oracle database for free. There is something called XE or Express Edition. And this is an on-premises database that from Oracle is 100% free to develop, deploy, and distribute. And a number of partners and customers have built applications on Apex, on XE, and it's been completely free. There are physical limitations. It can only address one CPU, and I think you're limited to maybe 12 gigabytes of storage. But for embedded systems, it's actually very powerful. I can think of a big, I'll call it like a hardware store, a hardware chain in Asia Pacific, where they have Apex on XE available in every store. And then there's also something called the Oracle Cloud Free tier. And on that is the always free autonomous database. And the URL for that is, if you go to oracle.com/free, you can sign up for the Oracle Cloud Free tier. I have done so myself. I did provide my credit card during the sign-up process, and the credit card is only used for validation of me as a human, that I'm not some hacker. Even I was a little bit nervous at first. I thought, okay, how is Oracle going to charge me here? And I did this probably, I don't know, 9 months ago, and I've yet to get a charge from Oracle, and I've restricted my usage to the always free services. But you can use the always free autonomous database there, and people use it for a number of solutions for real. And I can think most recently, there's a partner of Oracle's from Finland, Heli Helskiaho, Heli from Finland. If you're in the Oracle community, you know who that is. And she assisted the country of Finland by building an Apex app on always free autonomous database. In Finland, as she just described in an online interview recently, they were recording occurrences of people who had COVID-19, their location. They started recording this on a blog. And then it progressed from a blog to an Excel spreadsheet. And of course, that isn't very easy for people to add information to, especially if you're trying to solicit people contributions from around the country. And so her team at her company, I think less than 2 weeks, they built a solution on Apex on Autonomous Database, and this is live right now. And they rolled this out to effectively the entire country of Finland for people to report where they have encountered someone, or if someone had COVID-19, they could report their location and time. And then they present this, oddly enough, in conjunction with Oracle Spatial on a map, and where you can see it's effectively a heat map where you can see where there are rising occurrences of COVID. So oracle.com/free. It is completely capable, and it's running an app that is exposed to the entire country of Finland today. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, that's great. That was really cool. And can you touch on how Apex authenticates users? What authentication mechanisms within the enterprise can Apex interface with as well?
Sure, that's a great question. I kind of glossed over that when I demonstrated this app. Oh, and I do have the app up live behind me if there are additional questions here. So I can show that much live because like I said, I built it just a couple hours ago. By default, Apex uses the same authentication mechanism as you use to log into the Apex workspace. So when you go to apex.oracle.com or you sign up for Autonomous Database, effectively, you'll get access to an Apex workspace. And there typically is a one-to-one correlation between an Apex workspace and an underlying database schema where you're going to store your objects and data and the like. And you log into this workspace using something called Apex account credentials. And when I built my app and I immediately ran it, by default, it uses this authentication scheme of Apex account credentials. But understand that we have completely abstracted the definition of the underlying Apex app to how one authenticates. So at will, I could, as a developer, change the definition of the application to use database credentials if I wanted to, LDAP, generic OpenID Connect or OAuth 2, HTTP header variable, and on. So it is completely open, and anything that we haven't provided necessarily out of the box, we also support custom authentication. But we find for most enterprise customers that we have provided everything you need out of the box. And I should say, all this is without any additional infrastructure. I didn't put up my safe harbor slide at the beginning, so I'm going to talk about a little bit of a future. But in the forthcoming Oracle Database 21C, Apex on this, we will be able to natively support SAML authentication, again, without any other middle tier infrastructure. So short answer, I like to think we have almost everything that is mainstream covered out of the box today in Apex.
Wow, great. Another question for you. Can you talk about how we at Oracle are using Apex to automate some of our operations?
That's a great question. Well, is there clarity on what is meant by operations?
No, that's the question.
Okay. Well, I can give a couple answers here. So a lot of the cloud operations and DevOps teams, as I think I showed, they are managing patching schedules. They're gathering performance information. They're really consolidating all of this information in many cases an autonomous database, and putting both an executive dashboard on this, as well as I would say like their operational data at the same time for them to really manage their line of business. This is more and more used by cloud operations teams at Oracle. In terms of actual, I would say, automation of further operations, there is an internal team that, and again, they have this system now for probably the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, that they manage all patching and deployment across the internal enterprise infrastructure using Apex. So if they want to schedule a patch on a particular element in the enterprise, some server in the enterprise, they basically have agents implemented on each of these remote servers, and they are effectively instructed from the Oracle database over REST to deploy certain software assets there. So they have really taken a lot of the manual labor out of this process. Before, right, you would give someone a run book, and they would have to effectively go to physically each machine and run this, and they have completely automated the distribution of patching and upgrades. This is even at the OS level. It's more than just the database. Even at the OS level, they'll do patching of middle tier infrastructure, operating system, databases, effectively everything. That's very much a custom system, but that is a case how we have automated the enterprise using Apex and Oracle database.
Wow, that's great. So those are the only questions that we have in the queue right now. I'll give everyone a minute if anyone has any other questions. Joel, in the meantime, do you want to pull up that last slide with some additional information for folks?
Oh, sure, just a second. I will.
Thanks, Joel. And it looks like there aren't any more questions. So thank you all for attending. We're going to throw up a quick poll. So if you could hang around and tell us what you thought of today's presentation, that would be awesome. We're always looking for feedback. And in terms of a replay for this webinar, you'll receive one within the next 48 hours. It will be available on Oracle Video Hub. And you'll receive an email with the link and instructions on how to access the replay. And if you have any further questions for Joel or anyone at Oracle, you can reach out to Oracle at oracle-contact_ww@oracle.com, and we'll set you up with the right person to answer your questions. So with that said, we'll give everyone a couple minutes back in their day. Thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you on future Oracle at Oracle webinars.